in campaign after campaign, and this is directed to Majority Leader Harry Reid and Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. In campaign after campaign, we have put boots on the ground, gone door to door to get out the vote, run phone banks, and raised money to secure this vision. Now this vision has come back to haunt us. Mr. President, let me read that again. This is the president of the Teamsters describing the political efforts that members of the Teamsters all over this country have done to elect Democrats to the United States Senate and the United States House. And in his words, he said, because of Obamacare, their vision of supporting Democrats politically, now this vision has come back to haunt us. Mr. President, if that doesn't get the attention of men and women of this body, I don't know what does. The letter continues, since the ACA was enacted, we have been bringing our deep concerns to the administration, seeking reasonable regulatory interpretations to the statute that would help prevent the destruction of nonprofit health plans. As you both know firsthand, our persuasive arguments have been disregarded and met with a stone wall by the White House and the pertinent agencies. Now let me stop you there, Mr. President. The average American does not have the political sway that a major labor union like the Teamsters has. The average American especially does not have the political sway that a major labor union has with this president, a Democratic president with a Democratic majority in the Senate. And yet the head of the Teamsters say that they have been met with, quote, that their persuasive arguments have been disregarded, and they have been met with a stone wall by the White House and the pertinent agencies. Mr. President, a powerful labor union with friends in high office, with Stroke in Washington, is met with a stone wall? What do you think the average American is met with? Do you think the reception is more welcoming to the average American? Perhaps the average American doesn't even get to see that stone wall to be rejected. Doesn't even have a forum to raise those arguments, to have them disregarded and rejected. The letter continues. This is especially stinging because other stakeholders have repeatedly received successful interpretations for their respective grievances. Most disconcerting, of course, is last week's huge accommodation for the employer community, extending the statutorily mandated December 31st, 2013 deadline for the employer-mandated penalties. Time is running out. Congress wrote this law. We voted for you. We have a problem. You need to fix it. The unintended consequences of the ACA are severe. Perverse incentives are already creating nightmare scenarios. Nightmare. Nightmare. That's the words the Teamsters use, nightmare. Some Democratic senators object to the use of the word train wreck. Perhaps nightmare would be better. That comes from the Teamsters in writing describing what Obamacare is doing. Why are we here? You know, nightmare is fitting. It's past midnight. Why are we here? Because the American people are experiencing the nightmare that is Obamacare. And we need to help them wake up from this very bad dream. The law as it stands will hurt millions of Americans, including the members of our respective unions. We are looking to you to make sure these changes are made. Signed, James P. Hoffa, General President, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Now, Mr. President, I don't have to remind anyone that the Teamsters, that Mr. Hoffa, are not loyal Republicans. They're not even disloyal Republicans. They have been active foot soldiers in the army to elect President Obama and to elect Democrats to this body. This letter describes Obamacare as a nightmare. This letter describes how it is hurting millions of Americans, including the members of their respective unions. And interestingly enough, this letter uses the same phrase, we can no longer stand silent, that the roofers union used. We won't stand silent either. Why is it that both of these unions use that same phrase? I would suggest, listen, everyone in this body understands politics, understands sticking with your team, dancing with the team that brung you. No union is eager to criticize President Obama. They've got too much invested in this administration. And there is a lot of pressure on the labor unions. I can't imagine what the repercussions were to Mr. Hoffa and to the Teamsters after this letter was sent. I am quite certain it did not produce joy and celebration in the political classes in Washington. I think it's quite striking, though, that both the Roofers Union and the Teamsters say we can no longer stand silent because the pressure is enormous. And let me tell you someone else, another group that is right now standing silent that I hope can no longer stand silent. And that consists of elected Democrats in this body. You know, elected Democrats in this body, these union men and women knocked on doors, worked to elect many members of this body. If their union leaders can't stand silent, I would hope the politicians that pledge to fight for them won't stand silent either, that we would see what a remarkable thing it would be to see a Democrat have the courage of James Hoffa, to see a Democrat senator stand up and have the courage to say, you know, look, I supported Obamacare. That's what Mr. Hoffa said. I supported it at first because I believed the promise that were made. I thought this thing might work. But we've seen it hasn't. It's a nightmare. It's hurting hardworking American families. And Mr. President, any Democrat who did so could be certain to receive serious repercussions from the party. Political parties do not like it when you rock the boat. I can promise you Senator Lee and I have more than a passing awareness of that in our respective party. But at the end of the day, if you're responding to the American people, if you're listening to the American people, you're doing their job. And I hope in the course of this week that of the 54 Democrats in this body, that we see 1, 2, 3, I hope we see a dozen have the courage that Mr. Hoffa showed. Have the courage to speak out about the train wreck, about the nightmare that is Obamacare, that is hurting Americans, that is killing jobs, that is pushing people into part-time work, that is driving up health insurance premiums, and that is causing more and more people to lose their health insurance. That's the courage we need. But you know what? It will not come from business as usual in Washington. It will not come from wanting to be popular in the conference lodges. It will only come from elected officials making the decision, the radical decision, to get back to the job we're supposed to do of listening to the people. Make D.C. listen. That's what we should be doing.